Hey guys, tonight we're drifting all the way to Aotearoa, New Zealand many centuries ago. You're standing on a mist-washed ridge where the air tastes faintly of salt and fern sap, and the world feels like it's holding its breath. It's early, too early for the sun to be more than a pale thought behind the clouds. You can hear the tide somewhere below, a distant hush like someone slowly unrolling fabric. Then there it is, the sound you've been waiting for. The long, hollow call of the Pūtātara, the conch shell horn. Before we dive in, take a second. Get comfortable. Maybe pull your blanket a little closer. Let the hum of a fan fill the gaps between these words. And hey, if you enjoy these sleepy wanderings through odd corners of history, you can like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually mean it. I'd rather have a small tribe of sincere dreamers than an army of half-awake scrollers. And if you're here right now, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is. I love imagining all those tiny glowing screens around the world. Flickering like campfires. Now, dim your lights. Let's ease into the mist. You stand among tall flax leaves, beads of dew gathering on your sleeves. In the valley below lies the fortified village your people will one day test. But tonight is not for fighting. Tonight is for listening. Another Pūtātara answers from a different ridge, and the two voices twist in the fog like dolphins calling across the water. You realize the sound is a language of its own. The rhythm tells watchers when to gather, when to rest, when to prepare. Food. There are no drums here. No booming declarations, just patient breaths through seashell spirals. You bring the shell to your lips. Its rim is cool, almost slick, chipped on one edge from a long ago fall. Someone carved spirals into it, a pattern that feels both purposeful and absent-minded, like it wanted to mirror the sea itself. When you blow, the note trembles, part song, part sigh. It's supposed to carry across miles, bouncing between cliffs until it reaches the camp by the river. Somewhere, someone will count the echoes. The ridge is alive in small ways. A feather. From a killer bird drifts past, a stick snaps underfoot, and from far off comes the smell of wood smoke. You think of how many mornings like this have come and gone, how many watchers stood here before you. The air carries a promise you probably won't survive this, or at least the version of you that stands here won't. The battle, when it. Komis will belong to someone steadier, quieter. There's an art to patience, your elders say. The Maori word for strategy rongo also carries a sense of listening. You don't just make plans. You listen to what the land tells you. Tonight the land says, wait, a companion, Hainatua, joins you. Her breath a visible curl in the chill. She's wrapped in a cloak woven from kiwi feathers, each one dark and soft, perfect for blending into pre-dawn shadow. She leans on a spear capped with a feather plume that sways gently when she breathes. The chief says, not today. She murmurs. The pea still sleeps. Let them dream. You nod. It's easy to mistake stillness for inaction, but these hills are busy in their silence. Somewhere, scouts mark footpaths with broken fern stems, subtle signs meant only for those who know where to look. Below, watchfires gutter down to faint glows decoys to keep prying eyes guessing. Even the birds seem in on the plan. There. Calls time to avoid giving away your ridge. You crouch, brushing away the dew from a stone and tracing faint carvings, old spirals like those on your shell. The pattern might be decorative, or maybe it's a map or a charm. Historians will argue for generations whether such marks were ritual or practical, but here, now, it doesn't matter. The mark is both. It's a conversation between humans and land, etched in silence. The first light breaks over the horizon like a thin breath. The fog glows from within, and you can finally see the sea in the distance, restless but far away. The shell horn at your side gleams faintly, catching that thin thread of dawn. A seabird. And you imagine it sounds impatient, though it's only hungry. Someone behind you yawns, and you almost laugh. For all the mystery, this is still a human gathering warrior stretching. Rubbing their eyes, complaining about the cold. One offers you a bit of roasted kumara from a woven basket, its sweetness cutting through the salt in the air. The smell lingers, comforting. You chew slowly, tasting earth and smoke. There's a rhythm to these mornings that could put anyone to sleep. The call, the quiet, the breath, the waiting. It's oddly domestic, almost peaceful. A stranger could mistake this for a village waking. Up for work, and in a sense it is. The work of patience. You remember your grandfather saying that the Pūtātara's first note wasn't a war cry, but a greeting to ancestors. To the land, to everyone listening in the half-dark, maybe that's why it feels soothing more than alarming. Each breath through the shell folds the past into the present dot as the day brightens. The mist thins, revealing the terraces carved into the hill opposite yours. That's the next part of your story, the careful architecture of defense, every trench and rampart built to make time an ally. You watch smoke drift lazily from the distant pea, and for a fleeting moment, it looks like a living creature stretching, curling, deciding. The chief lifts his carved toko, tapping it gently against the earth. A signal, enough for today. The sound is faint, like a heartbeat muffled by moss. You take one last look at the chipped horn in your hand. Its surface glints once before dulling again, patient as the land itself. The mist begins to clear entirely now, and sunlight touches. The ridge in golden patches. The war, if you can even call it that yet, hasn't begun, but already it has shaped you. You've learned that silence is a tool, not an absence, and that sometimes the loudest call of all is the one that doesn't need to be made, you sling. The shell horn across your shoulder and start the slow descent toward the next valley, where maps are drawn not on paper, but on memory. The air smells of fern, smoke, and something older anticipation, perhaps. Or history itself waiting to be told. The ocean hums again in the distance, steady and eternal. You follow its rhythm down the ridge, one quiet footstep after another, carrying the chipped shell and the echo of patience into the day ahead. You move carefully along the path that winds down from the ridge, dew-soaked ferns brushing your ankles. The sun has fully climbed now, spilling light that feels thin and curious, like it's still deciding whether to warm the world before you. Stretches a scene that would make any strategist grin. Terraces, ditches, fences, an entire hill sculpted into a fortress. This is the Maori stronghold, and it looks both alive and asleep. A creature curled in its own defenses. You pause to take it in, feeling how the land itself seems to breathe. A pea isn't built on a hill. It's built with it. Every ridge, every ledge, every awkward lump of earth has a purpose. You crouch, tracing the faint outlines of a rampart once lined with palisades of sharpened wood. Now only stumps remain, gray and mossy, but you can still imagine them rising like ribs. Beneath your hand, the soil is cool and gritty, still damp. From the morning fog dot somewhere behind you, someone coughs softly. It's Hainatua again, the one with the feathered cloak. She points with her spear toward the lower terrace, where a patch of darker soil marks the entrance to a tunnel. That's where they stored water, she says quietly. And food? They say one pea could last months without surrendering. You nod, thinking about that word surrendering. The Maori didn't think of sieges as rushing storms. They thought of them as endurance games. A pea like this wasn't just a military invention. It was an act of faith and patience. You picture families tucked behind those wooden walls, listening for shell calls, counting the days by the smoke from their cooking. Fires that the smell of earth fills your nose, rich and clean. You brush a clump of dirt from your hand and notice a faint charcoal mark on a flat stone. A few curved lines, the ghost of a map. Someone once sketched troop paths or defense rings here, then burned it away when the job was done. You can almost see the general tattooed face lit by the flicker of a torch leaning close to the stone, whispering to a younger fighter, "Here we hold them. Here we let them in." A map made of soot. That's history for you, gone as soon as it's useful. You try to imagine how this hill would have sounded when the pea was alive. The buzz of insects over gardens of kumara and taro. The squeak of flax ropes pulling up baskets of food. The calls of children echoing from terrace to terrace. And beneath it all, the steady hum of water streams diverted and tunneled through the earth to feed the people within. If patience were a sound, it would be that steady trickle. The chief, old Tamahaiku, joins you. He's holding his carved toko toko again, the walking staff he always uses to punctuate his thoughts. He taps it lightly on a rock. See how the terraces turn inward, he says, like the spiral on your shell horn. They built this P to confuse the wind to make time flow slower. You laugh softly. To make time flow slower, he smiles. A good siege isn't about who attacks first. It's about who runs out. Of stories last? That's what you'll remember later. The idea that stories, not spears, determine who endures. You climb higher along the terraces, your fingers grazing the bark of long-dead palisades. The sun strikes the sea below, flashing silver. Somewhere beyond the next ridge, your own people are drawing up their temporary camp, marking it with woven mats and charcoal patterns on the ground. The two sights, this sleeping pea and your restless camp, feel like mirror images. Both waiting, both pretending not to care about time dot at the top of the hill. The view is dizzying. You can see the river curling through the valley like a coiled eel. Beyond that, the faint haze of cooking smoke. From your side, the air smells faintly of roasted kumara again, a reminder that battles are fed as much by stomachs as by courage. You sit for a while, the wind teasing your cloak. From this height, you realize how interlocked everything is. Water, food, the angle of the sun, even the flight paths of birds. This fortress wasn't just designed to keep people out. It was designed to listen to its environment. The trenches collect rainwater. The palisades creak when the wind shifts, telling guards which direction weather is coming from. Historians will someday debate whether this was intentional or a happy accident. But standing here, you know there's no such thing as coincidence in the Maori landscape. A distant sound drifts up from below, the faint hum of a pentara. Your heart quickens, then steadies when you recognize it as a signal for food, not for war. Still, the shell's echo bounces through the valley, brushing the edges of your thoughts. You press your hand against the chipped shell hanging from your shoulder, as if it needs reassurance that it's not alone. You imagine centuries from now, archaeologists puzzling over one of these shells in a museum, wondering whether it was used for ceremony or battle. The truth is both. Every breath blown through it carries the weight of choice. The wind picks up, bringing with it a scent of brine and smoke. Somewhere in the distance, a gull cries, a small interruption in the stillness. Tamahaiku shades his eyes, gazing toward the horizon. They'll move supplies upriver tomorrow, he murmurs. The siege will begin when the moon is fat. You picture the river now, canoes sliding silently through morning mist, loaded with baskets of food, bundles of flax rope, and bundles of spears. The thought is oddly soothing, the way a routine can be. Nothing dramatic, just preparation. You realize patience has a smell too, the faint musk of earth warmed by sun and effort. A lizard scurries across your path, its scales catching the light. You watch it vanish into a crack between stones, thinking of how even the smallest creatures find safety in this layered ground. You can't help smiling. This hill doesn't belong to the living or the dead. It belongs to the waiting. You rise, brushing dust from your knees. Haiatua gestures for you to follow, her cloak catching the wind. Together, you descend toward the valley, where the slow gathering will begin. The long, quiet mustering of patience and supplies dot as you walk. You glance once more at the charcoal-drawn map, now barely visible on the bark. It seems to shimmer, briefly, like something trying to remember itself. You touch it lightly, leaving a faint smudge on your fingertips. You'll carry that mark with you, a reminder that even the most careful plans fade. But the act of planning never does. Behind you, the wind stirs through the terraces, whispering secrets to no one in particular. The pea holds its breath once more, waiting for time to move again. The valley smells of smoke and river water earthy, humid, alive. The gathering begins not with shouts or orders, but with the rhythmic splash of paddles. Canoes waka slide along the water like long, gliding shadows. You watch from the bank as the morning sun winks on their wet hulls. Each vessel carries bundles of supplies, baskets of dried kumara, gourds filled with water, Woven mats and rolled flax ropes that look like sleeping snakes. The air is thick with motion, but low on noise. Everyone seems to know their part, like actors in a play they've rehearsed since birth. You're part of the quiet orchestra too, tying bundles, checking lashings, stacking baskets into neat pyramids on the sand. It's not the heroic kind of work that legends mention, but it's the kind that keeps legends possible. The river murmurs constantly beside you. It feels old, patient, and unhurried, as though it's seen hundreds of gatherings like this one. You dip your hands into it, and the cool water smells faintly metallic. Little ripples form around your fingers before drifting downstream, as if even the river doesn't want to hurry hind dash at you as sits cross-legged nearby, her feather cloak spread like dark moss behind her. She's weaving a small basket, quick, neat, almost hypnotic. The smell of flax fibers mixes with the faint sweetness of roasted food from the campfires river. You can tell how confident a group is by how slowly it prepares, she says. If we rush, it means fear. You grin. So the slower we move, the braver we are? She shrugs. Something like that. Or maybe we're just good at pretending. Laugh joins the ambient sounds of camp. Splashing, murmured conversation. The occasional sharp thwack of a stick striking rope to tighten it. A few kids chase each other along the shore, their feet leaving temporary constellations of prints. Someone hums an old waiata, a work song about patience and tide timing. Its melody is circular, ending where it begins, looping softly until you almost forget when it started as the sun climbs. You notice how the light keeps changing the mood of the camp. It strikes the water, blinding for a second, then slides over, to paint the flax ropes golden. The smell of cooked fish rises, making your stomach stir. You share a strip of smoked eel with another helper, its saltiness balancing the sweetness of the kumara you ate earlier. The taste anchors you, a small reward in this rhythm of waiting. By midday, the canoes have nearly doubled in number. They arrive in silent pairs, the paddler's shoulders glistening with sweat. On each prow sits a carved figurehead sometimes. A bird, sometimes a human face, sometimes something that looks like both. The details are mesmerizing. Spirals carved into wood, inlays of paua shell that flash turquoise in the sun. One of the newcomers, a boy barely older than you, helps lift his canoe onto the shore. His hands are raw and bleeding slightly from the rope. He doesn't complain, just dips them into the river, wincing but smiling. This is how the land tests us, someone says behind you. You turn to see Tama Haiku, the chief again, his staff in hand. The work before the battle matters more than the battle itself. If a man can tie a bundle well, he can lead one too. He's joking, but only halfway. You nod respectfully, glancing at the carved toko, its spirals catching the sunlight. You remember his words about time flowing slower? Here, under the weight of the day's heat, that idea feels literal. Every minute seems stretched thin, like honey dripping too slowly to fall. Toward afternoon, the rhythm of the camp settles into something almost domestic. Women lay out woven mats to dry. Men carve small wooden stakes for marking supply spots. A pair of elders sit side by side, arguing softly about where the food lines should be drawn. Their tone affectionate but stubborn. It's in these small gestures that the heart of the siege lies, not in blood or shouting, but in planning where to put the baskets. You touch one of them, the same kind Hein Tua made. It's weaved tight and smooth. Inside are thin slices of dried kumara, sweet and tough like candied sunlight. You chew one slowly, tasting patience. Later, a horn sounds, not the deep call of the Pūtātara, but a shorter, reedy note blown through a wooden tube. It signals the evening count. One by one, groups call back with their own little songs or whistles, confirming presence, marking position. It's like an ancient roll call, but musical, echoing gently through the valley. You imagine how it must sound to anyone hiding in the trees beyond, like the land itself, whispering in multiple voices. Historians, centuries later, will puzzle over these small rituals. Some will say they were spiritual acts meant to please local spirits. Others will argue they were purely logistical. But you standing here know they're both. The sound keeps the people steady. The rhythm reminds them who they are, as twilight comes. A pink hue slips across the river. The canoes are beached now, lined up like sleeping whales. Fires flicker along the banks, the air thick with the smell of smoke and roasting food. You stretch your arms, tired but calm. It's not the exhaustion of fear. It's the kind earned through purpose. You spot the chipped shell horn lying near your mat, resting beside a half-finished basket. You pick it up and feel its cool weight. You can almost hear echoes of this. Morning's call still lodged in its spiral. You tilt it, and light spills across its carved surface in the distance. Tamahaiku's staff taps the ground twice, a signal that the camp may rest. Around you, conversation softens. A few people sing low, the melody blending with the crackle of firewood. The river keeps its same slow rhythm. You lie down beside the water, using a rolled cloak for a pillow. The stars begin to appear, shy at first, then confident. The night smells of cooked fish, damp earth, and smoke, all the scents that spell survival. As you close your eyes. The feather plume on Hainatua's spear shifts slightly in the breeze, catching the firelight. You make a mental note of it, not realizing yet how often that plume will return to your story. Like a bookmark, the wind refuses to turn. Sleep creeps close, and the last thing you hear before drifting off is the murmur of the river and the faint, far-off echo of a horn calling else to wait. The morning begins with the scent of smoke and roasted fern root. When you open your eyes, the river's breath has turned misty again, and the world seems to be thinking before it speaks. You sit up slowly, brushing off sand, and notice that most of the camp is already awake, though. Awake here doesn't mean rushing. It's more like a long exhale. Men and women gather near a low fire, their silhouettes gentle against the pale dawn. You wander closer, drawn by the rhythm of low voices. The chiefs are meeting Tamahaiku among them, his carved toko resting across his knees. They sit in a circle, firelight painting their faces in amber and shadow. You stand just outside the glow, a respectful listener rather than a participant. They're talking about when to strike. Not if, but when. The conversation is quiet but layered, a kind of verbal chess match. One chief suggests attacking before the next full moon. Another insists that waiting until the crops ripen will starve the enemy faster. Each idea is offered softly, almost tenderly, as if they were gifts to be unwrapped. Even disagreement sounds polite here. You realize that this too is the slow debate, the weighing of patience against opportunity. Each man's words are measured not just by logic, but by mana, personal authority. The wrong tone could bruise pride more than a blade. You notice Hainatua among the listeners, kneeling just behind the elders. Her cloak feathers gleam faintly, catching stray sparks. When she leans closer to whisper something to Tamahaiku, you see a faint smile cross his face. "Ah, the young have sharper eyes," he says, glancing your way. "They notice what we miss." You glance around nervously, wondering what you've supposedly noticed. Hainatua grins, a flicker of mischief in her eyes. "The clouds," she says, "they're thick in the east. Maybe they're waiting for us to hurry so they can laugh when the rain ruins our firewood." The group chuckles softly. Even in strategy, humor has a place. Someone tosses a stick into the fire, and sparks drift upward like small messengers. You can smell the charred sweetness of the wood tea tree, perhaps, and the faint metallic tang of wet earth underneath. The chiefs resume their discussion, now shifting to alliances. One mentions old kin in another valley who might send aid. Another worries about past grudges. The web of loyalty stretches thin across these lands, shimmering but fragile. You think about how many sieges have probably been undone not by weapons, but by words said in the wrong tone over the wrong fire as. The debate continues. Tamahaiku lifts his staff and points toward a tall bundle beside the fire. Someone unwraps it, revealing several objects: polished stones, feathers, and a single small bowl filled with ashes. The ashes belong to a fallen ancestor, a warrior from an older siege. Before any decision, the chiefs offer a moment of silence. for him. The bowl is passed hand to hand, the faint smell of burnt flax drifting up each time the lid opens. It's not grim, though. It's grounding. The ashes remind everyone that the dead are listening, that their patience was once tested. True. When the bowl reaches you, Tama Haiku nods. Even the watchers should remember, he says. You hold it gently, feeling the weight not heavy, but profound. The air seems thicker for a moment, then lighter again when you pass it on. As the fire burns lower, a lull settles. One of the elders begins telling an old story about a siege where the warriors waited so long that moss grew on their spears. The story's half joke, half lesson. You find yourself smiling at the imaged soldiers polishing their mossy weapons, just to have something to do. By late morning, the meeting dissolves into smaller clusters of conversation. You find yourself sitting with Hainatua near the edge of camp. She plucks at a blade of grass, twisting it idly. Do you think we'll ever actually fight? She asks. You shrug. Maybe fighting is just waiting loudly. She laughs, startled and pleased. That's good. I'll tell Tama Haiku. You said that. You groan, but she just keeps laughing, her voice carrying like birdsong. Around you, camp life resumes its slow rhythm. Children fetch water. Women wash baskets in the shallows. Men carve new spear shafts. Every act is deliberate, almost ceremonial. You wander toward the supply huts where a few warriors are sharpening obsidian blades. The sound soft scraping mixes with the crackle of fire. You pick up one of the finished blades and test its edge with your thumb. It's cold and perfect, reflecting light like captured lightning. Across the clearing, Tama Haiku begins humming. A chant. The others join, their low voices blending with the sounds of work. It's a planning song, one used for centuries to steady the mind and unify purpose. You don't know all the words, but you recognize the rhythm. It's the same as the tide you hear at night, the same as your heartbeat when the shell horn calls . As the sun leans toward afternoon, the meeting breaks entirely. The chiefs walk the perimeter, tracing invisible lines in the soil. Tama Haiku stops by you and rests his hand briefly on your shoulder. You listen well, he says. Keep doing that. A warrior who listens lives longer than one who speaks. You nod, even if what I hear is silence. Especially then, he says, smiling faintly. Silence carries more news than noise. When he walks away, you notice something strange. Though the conversation has ended, the fire still burns in the center of the camp. Its embers glow like slow heartbeats. Every so often, someone drops another stick on it, keeping it alive, but quiet. You realize the fire is like a siege itself, never fierce enough to flare out, never weak enough to die. The day winds down, the air heavy with the smell of cooked fern root and smoke. The chief circle has scattered, but the echoes of their whispered plans seem to linger, tangled with the drifting ash. You sit beside the river again, watching the reflection of the plume on Hainatua's spear dance on the surface of the water. Somewhere behind you, the shell horn rests beside the chief's staff. The two objects catching the same last strand of sunlight before dusk claims it. You can't tell whether they're symbols of leadership or simply tools waiting to be used. Maybe both. In the fading light. You feel it again, that quiet tension between motion and stillness, sound and silence, war and waiting. You lean back on your hands, feeling the damp grass under your palms. The smell of smoke clings to your hair. And your stomach hums with the comfort of food. Tomorrow, you suspect, the waiting will grow longer. But tonight, the whispers have done their work. Plans have been planted like seeds, and like all good seeds, they'll bloom only when patience says it's time. You close your eyes and listen to the night rise around you. Soft water, quiet laughter, the faint rustle of wind in flax. Somewhere far away, the Pūtātara sighs once more, long and low, as if agreeing that nothing worth winning ever comes quickly. The night settles with a softness that feels almost deliberate. You lie beneath a stretched flax mat, eyes half open, listening to the way sound drifts through camp. Crickets pulse in steady rhythm. The river hums faintly nearby. But something's missing, something your ears keep reaching for. It takes you a moment to realize what it is. Dot no drums. Dot not one beat. Not one thump echoing through the trees. You'd expected rhythm, some kind of heartbeat to measure the night, but all you get is quiet. The silence feels planned, intentional. It's the kind of silence that knows it's being listened to. You sit up slowly, drawing your cloak tighter. Hainatua is awake too, her hair catching the fire's dim light. She's poking the embers absently with a stick. You were waiting for drums, weren't you? She says without looking up. You smile, caught a little. She nods. They used to use drums, long ago. But we learned silence travels further. It reaches the mind before the ears. The fire pops quietly, sending a tiny ember spiraling upward. The camp beyond is nearly invisible now, just faint shapes, people curled in sleep, spears propped upright, bundles stacked like small shadows. The night feels alive with potential, but still, restrained dot across the valley, a single torch burns beside the enemy P. It flickers weakly, more symbolic than useful. One of your scouts had said they keep those torches going all night to comfort their guards, to remind them that company exists even in darkness. Your side used to do the same until someone realized darkness was better company than light. You lean back, elbows in the dirt, and gaze at the stars. The southern constellations look like scattered bone fragments, beautiful, fragile. The smell of wet fern lingers in the air, mixing with the faint sweetness of smoke. You can almost hear the plants breathing. Tamahiku's voice breaks the stillness. Low but firm. No horns tonight, he says as he passes through camp, his staff gently tapping the ground. Let them think we've gone. A ripple of acknowledgement spreads, quiet as breath. People nod. Some extinguish their small fires. Soon, the camp fades to shadow entirely. The world turned to shades of deep blue and faint silver. The silence grows until it feels physical, pressing against your skin. You can hear the shift of your own heartbeat, the soft exhale of someone nearby, even the slide of river stones underfoot as the current moves. Somewhere in the dark, an owl calls once, then goes silent again. Hainatua whispers, "This is how. We win by letting the quiet speak for us." You glance toward the ridge where the torch burns. It flickers irregularly, sometimes strong, sometimes guttering. You imagine the sentries there nervous, trying to guess where you are. Listening so hard they probably invent noises just to fill the void. It must be maddening. You grin faintly. So, we're boring them to death? She laughs softly, covering her mouth. Something like that. The hours stretch. The silence changes character every so often, soft at first, then thick, then strangely alert, as though it's leaning forward. You find yourself drifting between waking and sleep, aware of every sound yet comforted by their absence. At one point, a faint rustle catches your ear, a figure moving between the tents. It's Tamahaiku again, stopping by each cluster of sleeping warriors, touching his staff lightly to the ground near them. A signal of reassurance, or maybe a reminder that he's still there. You watch him move slow and steady, like a clock, marking time in gestures instead of ticks. When he reaches your mat, he pauses. "The loudest men die first," he says quietly, his tone not scolding, but reflective. "Remember that when dawn comes." You nod, not sure if you're meant to reply. He moves on, the sound of his steps swallowed by the soil. The night deepens further, turning heavy and soft at once. You close your eyes and listen to the silence, like it's a story being told. It's easy to see why later historians will argue about Maori warfare, why they'll imagine chaos and shouting, when in truth it was often this, a battle of patience, a weaponized calm. You think about that torch again. It's still flickering, weaker now. Maybe the wind's picking up, or maybe someone's finally too tired to keep it fed. Either way, it's surrendering by inches. You take out the Pūtātara shell from its sling and hold it in both hands. Its surface is cool, faintly damp from night air. You tilt it, watching starlight trace the edge of its chipped rim. For a moment, you're tempted to blow it, just to hear something, anything, but you don't. You wait. The shell hums softly in your palms, not from sound, but from memory. You can almost imagine its voice. the one that once carried across valleys. And you wonder if silence might be its truest song after all, somewhere upriver. A log cracks in the fire, the sharp sound echoing like thunder in the still air. Instantly, heads lift, bodies stiffen. But Tamahaiku raises his staff once and the motion subsides. No alarm, no panic. Just the understanding that even accidents are part of the night's rhythm. Time stretches. You lose track of hours. The moon moves slowly across the sky, washing everything in cold light. You think about the people inside that distant pia wake now, whispering about ghosts in the hills. Maybe wondering if they dreamed your entire. Camp Dot, when dawn finally hints on the horizon, it comes without fanfare. No horn, no drum, not even a cough. Just a gradual thinning of the dark. You can see faint silhouettes of trees again, the silver outline of the river. A soft mist crawls. Up the valley walls, muffling every sound into gentleness. Dot the torch across the way has burned out completely. Only a curl of smoke remains, twisting upward before dissolving. You exhale slowly, realizing you've been holding your breath. Haing Atua stirs beside you, blinking at the sky. We're still here, she murmurs. You smile. And they still think we're not. Somewhere behind you, Tamahaiku's staff taps once against the ground, a signal as soft as a heartbeat. It's not a call to arms. It's simply a reminder that even stillness has tempo. The quiet lingers, deep and clean, wrapping the camp in a fragile peace that feels earned. And as the sun rises, gilding the valley in soft gold, you understand why this tactic works not. Because it confuses the enemy, but because it calms the heart. The warriors who can sleep through silence are the ones who will survive its breaking. You lean back, the earth cool against your spine, and listen one more time to the world's softest song. It's made of wind through grass, water over stone, and the collective breath of hundreds of patient souls waiting for the right moment to make a sound. That moment isn't yet. And that's exactly why it matters. So now, as the valley brightens and the shell horn remains quiet, you feel something shift, not in the camp, but in yourself. The silence that once seemed heavy now feels like a blanket. Every sound you do hear, the whisper of reeds, the hiss of dew evaporating feels earned. Like the world rewarding your patience, you imagine lying back fully now, watching clouds drift above the ridgeline. The air tastes clean, the kind of freshness you only notice when you stop trying to name it. Your body unwinds one piece at a time. The ache in your legs, the grit on your hands, the tension in your chest, they all ease, fading into the hum. Of the landscape, the chipped cantera rests beside you, its spiral catching the sunlight. For a fleeting moment, you think you can hear it breathing with the land. Maybe that's all it was ever meant to do, not announce war or victory, but remind you that stillness can be sacred. You close your eyes. The camp around you blurs into soft murmurs and slow movement. The last torch smoke from the enemy P rises like a thread and vanishes. Sleep doesn't arrive suddenly. It sidles closer, cautious but kind. It brings with it the sound of distant waves, the warmth of the morning sun, and the memory of a world where waiting wasn't weakness but wisdom. The last thing you feel before slipping under is the faintest breeze across your cheek. Like the valley itself exhaling. You've waited long enough. You've earned the rest. End of script. Sweet dreams.